Well, good afternoon or good morning, depending on which side of the country you're on. Welcome to today's RISSB webinar. Today we are looking into the 24-25 work plan, and we'll be discussing the areas around adoption and implementation of RISSB standards. So I really am thrilled to see you all here today, and I'm looking forward to hopefully answering a few questions that you may have about what RISSB has on offer over the next 12 months. I will firstly start by acknowledging the lands on which we meet today. For myself, I'm in Perth, so that means I'm on the Wadjak people's land of the Noongar Nation, and I show my pay my respects to any elders past, present and emerging, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders on call today. Next, just before we kick off, I'd also like to point out that we do have a chat here on the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. We will get to those as the webinar progresses. Keep it short and respectful, please. But of course, any thoughts you may have or any questions you have, please drop them in there and we'll do our very best to get to them. Now, at this point, I would like to introduce Suda Niles, the General Manager of Products and Innovation for RISSB, and he's going to take us through a few pointers about the work plan and what we're doing over the next 12 months. So, Suda, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Let me share my screen. Hopefully it will come through perfectly as it's supposed to happen. Chris, I'm assuming you can see the screen.
I certainly can, mate. It's coming up perfectly.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone for taking the time to spend some time with RISSB on the work plan and the kind of work that we're doing. Let me go through a little bit of the agenda of what we are trying to do today. I'll give you a bit of an introduction on the high level overview, key areas of focus. We'll talk a little bit about the work plan and some of the work that we've already done. And then look towards the work plan and what we are planning to do for the next year. And then we'll talk a little bit about our sort of changed focus that RISSB has had in the past 12 months or so, really articulating and focusing more on the implementation and adoption side of the work that we do. So it's a little bit of an update, and I'll just go through and provide you a high level. So let's start off by giving a bit of a high level engagement piece and some of the overview activities that we are doing. Look, as you are aware that RISSB, as his members, have got many stakeholders that we manage and many stakeholder requirements that we balance and continue to provide industry benefit through the work that we do. So these are some of the key areas that are priorities and key areas that we've been engaging. Many of you are across the National Rolling Stock Register and associated work that we are doing. It's a really streamlining of rolling stock registration. It's a key initiative, a key focus for the government, and as a result, a key focus of National Transport Commission, and RISSB continue to sort of support and build into that area by continually doing work in the national, in streamlining of rolling stock registration through the registration system, and through the white paper that we've developed, and continually have conversation with the Chief Engineers Group that RISSB will also facilitate moving forward. So that's a bit of work that's going on in that space. We, as some of you are already aware, we've done a lot of work through the National Rail Action Plan. And over the last 3 years, we have developed many standards and codes that will support the requirements of the National Rail Action Plan. Most of them are completed, with one project outstanding that we expect that to be completed in the next 3 months, or finalized in the next 3 months, to bring that whole package of works to completion. We continue to understand barriers to adoption. It's a key project that we are working with ARA, NTC, ONRIC in collaboration, a strong white paper that for organizations looking at what are some of the challenges to adoption of the standards that RISSB are developing, or codes and guidelines, and look at how those areas could be improved. So that is the project work that we are working on. We expect that report to come out in the next month or so, maybe 2, and industry will be able to have a look at some of the key areas as a whole where the challenges are, where the opportunities are, how we can move forward in assisting in this area of adoption. Harmonized rules, RISSB continue to work on that space. RISSB also co-chairs the Harmonization Committee under NTC. And so there is a lot of focus on harmonization, and RISSB will continue to focus on harmonization for the work that we do. We do multifaceted work with the National Level Crossing Safety Committee. We are part of the reference group, and we continue to work with them on several of the priorities that has come out of the roundtable that was held in March, early March this year. And so we continue to work support two of the key action items, both of which are related to data capture and data improvements, and RISSB is really supporting that area in that work. And obviously, we continue to support the National Outcome Committee. We are custodians of the system, and we continue to provide avenues to continue to renew that system, work that's undertaken, managed by RISSB to redevelop the system, and we expect that system to be ready and available in September. And a lot of work has gone through with the Outcome Committee and the committee members reviewing, and many industry stakeholders looking at the system and providing feedback. And we reckon the new system that's going to come out will be such a valuable tool for industry. So we look forward to that work. And obviously, we do a little bit of work in this area on health professionals. Many of you are aware there's a mandatory rail medical standard that's going to come through, and we're supporting doing some work in that space through a training program for health professionals who do those assessments, and also doing some work around the space with regards to the risk assessments for the various roles that are identified within the standard. So we'll be doing some work around that, and there'll be some example risk assessment that will be available for industry. So these are some high-level areas that we are working on, not to delve in too much into it, but just to give you a bit of a context on some of the key focus for RISSB in the current priority work that we are doing. Moving on, let's have a quick look at some of our work plan activities and just highlighting a few areas, and I'll probably call upon Chris to do some of the products. So over to you, Chris, and sort of highlight some of the key products areas that we have completed in the last financial year.
Great, thanks, Sudha. So as you can see, there was a number of products that we produced over the past 12 months, and there's been some really great ones there that have really made a difference to the rail industry and the way we go about our business. I'll just touch on a couple of them. So first was AS7661, the ballastless track systems. This was something that had been called for by the industry for some time. There's never been a standard around ballastless track systems for Australia. There are obviously European standards, but they don't necessarily work in an Australian context. So there was a lot of work done around producing something that was more suited to the Australian rail industry. This looked at lots of areas such as design, construction and maintenance. Design around noise control was also a big focus of this standard. Obviously, with ballastless track systems, they're generally used in suburban areas. So noise is a fairly significant feature on how you control that when you do have these sort of systems in place. And there's also a fair bit of talk around the interfaces between existing track systems, ballastless track systems, or slab track as it's often called, and how those interfaces work and how they can be managed safely. So overall, this standard will help the industry in a lot of ways. Standardisation of these systems obviously assist OEMs and designers on making sure that our systems meet certain requirements. They are up to the specifications that are required, and that we can continue to harmonise the production of these systems. So there's a lot of really good information in there. Another one I'll touch on quickly was AS7739 Part 2, Digital Engineering. So this was the data model that supported Part 1. There was a massive amount of work done in this space, and anyone who has any interest in digital engineering, I'd highly recommend reading both Parts 1 and Parts 2. This really is about transforming the rail industry. Data, obviously, as we know, it plays a massive part in industry going forward, and is playing a bigger and bigger part nearly every day. How we manage that data is really critical, and particularly when we start looking at digital engineering, ensuring that we have a common data model will make a real difference, not only to the industry, but to the designers and the people who are maintaining and operating this infrastructure, but the OEMs, when they get the information through to them in a common data model that the whole industry uses and understands, this simplifies the procurement process significantly. So I'd highly recommend people have a look at 7739 if you are interested in digital engineering at all. Sudha, I might throw to you for a couple. There's a couple of white papers there you might want to touch on that we've either released or are about to release.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, look, RISSB, not only we are developing standards, codes, and guidelines, we also do white papers that are very critical issues for the industry that we want to kind of take a closer look at. And many of those white papers are pieces of research work that helps us to continue to refine the work that we do. And so we've got two white papers that are here that I'm sort of showing out. Some of you are aware of the Streamlining Rolling Stock Registration white paper that was released a week back. And then we've also, with the associated information, we also have got the net zero gap analysis of rolling stock standards. What this product is all around understanding industry's need, and as industry move towards net zero targets, different states and different territories got different timeframes that they are looking at, and different organizations have also got different timeframes. What we are looking at here is to go, okay, if the industry is moving towards a net zero target, RISSB is keen to understand what does it mean from a standards point of view. What are the new standards we need to develop? What are the new, existing standards need to be updated, and take into consideration all those alternative fuel sources that the industry is considering, and how do we ensure that the standards are updated. So this white paper will come out in the next a few weeks, a work that is jointly done between RISSB and Jacobs, and then that paper will come out shortly, and that will provide a detailed information on some of the areas that we will focus on as far as standards is concerned that needs to be updated to facilitate net zero gap analysis. And the final part is a management system framework. This is a reference guide. Excuse me, often people have come to us and asked us this question around, okay, look, there are lots of RISSB products, how does it align with the ONSA requirements, and how does it link back to what are the documents that we need to consider? This document is a bit of a reference guide that we are providing. It maps all the RISSB documents and the standards and the codes and the guidelines against the 29 elements of the Rail Safety National Law, providing insights on some of the consideration, the RISSB documents consideration when the existing SMS is reviewed, or when you are developing a new SMS for a new accreditation. This will provide you some guidance on what are the documents and what are the information that's available for consideration. And so it's a reference guide, and we intend to keep it as a fairly base level reference guide, providing guidance on how to use the RISSB documents, but also continue to update it on an annual basis so you are aware of the changes that are taking place and what new documents need to be considered. And finally, just to update, without going too much into details, we continue to look at industry focus and what are the areas. We talked about the NREP projects. We have completed one more to continue in that area. We continue to develop ALCAM as a system. And then a very sort of engagement from an industry point of view, the lighting and visibility standard, which the industry has been looking for update. There's also been public requests for update of the standard. And also, many of you are aware there's an associated ONSA code of practice. So we are working to ensure that standard is updated. We've done that work already, and there's a possibility we will be reviewing that based on further information that comes through during 24-25. So it's a bit of a highlight of the work that we have done. So yes, that's really where we want to go. Is there any questions at this particular point in time that we need to address? We can. Otherwise, we can move on. Chris, up to you.
No, I think we can move on, Sudha. We'll let's get into the nitty gritty.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Just to highlight the work plan formulation, and we continue to refine this process and just to keep focus on the selection of those products. And there are multiple inputs that come into the selection of our products for work plan. Look, at the high end, we really want to understand key industry safety risks, and ARM is a really good tool to sort of provide input into that. And so we kind of use it as a test mark to understand, are we continually updating the system based on a quantitative risk tool, and what are the areas that we need to focus on. So it provides a input into the decision making on work plan formulation. We also do extensive engagement with industry leaders and governments, and that kind of provides us with an additional input on where the key focus is, where the safety focuses are, where the efficiency focuses are, and therefore when we select products for review or update, that's a key information input into the decision making. And then obviously national interests and priorities. There's a lot of talk about interoperability, and there's a lot of talk about harmonization in the last few years through the work of the National Rail Action Plan and the work that NT is undertaking, and with government involvement through the National Cabinet. The focus is around rail and rail manufacturing and rail interoperability, and these focuses are being considered in our discussion, and when we select the products to balance out to ensure that we are selecting the right products to work on as for the industry. And then sustainability and infrastructure resilience is a key function, as well as climate change is a key topic. We also know that the governments are focused on net zero targets. And so a lot of the work that we are doing is also ensuring that our products are updated and are available for industry and our members to ensure that it's adequately continually provide that support to industry through the updated standards and new standards where there are identified gaps. On-site regulatory priorities, often when you put a note like on-site regulatory priorities is a question mark around that. ONSA's work is based on risk. ONSA does a lot of risk assessment internally to understand where the key safety risks are. And based on those key safety risks, their priorities are highlighted to the industry. And so RISSB takes that as an input to understand that, hey, there's a safety priority based on their incident data and other information they've got in there. So that is taken into consideration when selecting the products for update. Major incident investigation is a key part when we look into the product catalog of work that we are doing. This is a key driver. We want to be able to look at the major incidents that are taking place and update where there are deficiencies, update our documents fairly quickly, rapidly, so that industry can take the changes that are coming through and incorporate them into their safety management system. And so that's another input. And some more smaller, sort of shorter input is, and we keep track of usage statistics and product downloads. They also provide us input, especially when we are looking at documents that require review. How much is the usage? Is it still a valid product? It doesn't necessarily give you a full picture, but it is an indicator on where some of the areas that we need to focus on. And then, as I said to you, adoption and benefit realization is also a focus. We want to not only develop products and put it on the shelf, but we want to see that they're adopted and the benefits of those standards are realized through the industry. So if there's a safety benefit that has been focused on a particular ACOP product, then we want to make sure that that is really realized in the industry. So those are some of the key focuses in our work plan formulation. And once we have used those avenues to select those products, then we actually provide that information to our standing committees to sort of sanity check that, and just to go and say, well, what is your input? Are you guys comfortable in the products that we have taken? Is there something else that we need to consider? And we also do extensive engagement with industry leaders and governments to provide that document to go and say, does it look like it's in the right level? Are there anything that we need to consider? And based on that input, we do the adjustment as required. As some of you are aware, we will always have a pipeline of work that has been come through this process. And while a work plan will look at a restricted amount of projects that we'll take on based on those prioritization activities, there are always additional products that are in the pipeline that come up as a result of any changes in industry risk that highlights a particular area of focus, and we will actually do that. That's just a bit about the work plan formulation. And this is really around the work plan for 24-25 with some of the highlights. We expect early next week, we'll have the full work plan published on our website. And so you will have a full detail information available for you. But we're just going to highlight a few things in this area of documents in this slide. Excuse me. I want to just focus on safety, and you look at the safety section that we have highlighted some products. Most of these products are really driven by incident findings and incident investigation. Some of them are from ATSP, some of them for industry incidents. And really these products that are focused on is really about improving safety outcome for the industry. And some of these products are really sort of a targeted review because certain aspects of the product a component needs to be updated to provide additional safety outcomes, and others are new products really looking at there's a gap, we need to kind of address that, and it's a recommendation from an investigation, and therefore RISSB is kind of focusing on those areas. So that's really around safety. Chris, maybe you can talk a little bit about the product reviews and maintenance and other activities. I can just hand it over to you to pick up a couple of the other stuff.
Beautiful, thanks, Sudha. Yeah, so there's a number of things that we're doing around the maintenance of our standards, codes and guidelines. So we're looking very closely at, well, as Sudha said, some of the incidents that have come up, but also looking at the relevance of some of our standards. So if you look down there at the product review and maintenance, the 1085 series, those who work in track construction would be very familiar with this series. It's been around a long time. So we are looking currently at 7 within this series and whether they're still relevant to the industry and if they need any minor changes to bring them up to relevance. So we've had already had good consultation with people within the industry, and some of these will be reissued as they currently stand. Others will get a little tweak. A lot of this is around how we can better communicate changes to the industry without bombarding the industry with massive changes all at once. We understand that when a standard changes, the industry needs to review that standard and understand what it means for them, for the particular RIM, RSO, whoever's involved. If we make wholesale changes, obviously there's more work involved. With these targeted and shorter reviews that we're doing with the 1085 series, we'll very clearly articulate the small changes that are made, which will be much more manageable to the rail industry rather than having to go through the entire product. So this is part of the work that we'll be talking about a bit later about how we try and help with the implementation and adoption. There's a couple of other things here that we'll be working on. So we'll be looking at 25 kV power rail traction system. So this is a new product that we're looking at. Don't think it's actually on the list here, Sudha, but I'm pretty excited about this one, so I'm going to mention it. So we're looking at standardization around the 25 kV rail traction systems. So that's one of the bigger projects we've got coming up. But also would like to look at things such as the wayside electrical charging interface for low emissions rolling stock. So again, this is about looking to the future and making sure that when we start developing a lot of these new technologies and they start coming into the industry, which they are now, that we have a standardized approach towards them. We don't want to be going down the road that the industry has and other industries have in the past, where you introduce new technologies, but they do not align. And particularly when you're looking at charging infrastructure, you just think about your mobile phones. there are countless number of charging facilities for the various different types of phones. We don't want to end up in the rail industry in a similar manner. So this is where we're trying to standardise these sort of things early on in the piece, so that it makes that interoperability and harmonisation piece much, much easier as we go through. Is there any others there that, Sudha, that you'd like me to touch on?
Yeah, look, just want to quickly touch on, thanks, Chris. Just want to quickly touch on the medical standards and risk assessments. We talked about that earlier. National priorities are always going to be a stream of work that we look at. And lighting and visibility, we'll be having a review of that as well in the future. But just to highlight the fact that under national priorities, we'll be picking up various things that are priorities, and how RISSB can continue to support in that area as well, to ensure that our projects and our products are aligned to ensure that industry gets the best value. Yeah. The other one I want to quickly highlight as well, network resilience is a key topic. We talked about that earlier, and then we continue to work on the hydrology. And hydrology is a great project, fantastic work group who are putting all their knowledge and sharing their knowledge across industry. This has been really re-looked at, because we no longer see, we talk about 100-year events in flooding and other areas, and now we are starting to see those events classified as 100-year events, but have, or 50-year events or 20-year events having much more frequently in the industry. And so really the hydrology and hydraulics are really a standard, looking at what the industry is doing in that area to manage network resilience. And it's a wider problem, more than just a standard, but really looking at that and providing ample input and a standardized approach, and sharing knowledge from the industry so that everyone else can do a similar approach to ensuring network resilience is maintained. So that's a bit of work in there just to highlight. And then almost a code of practice on key performance indicators for corridor infrastructure is really around setting up key performance indicators that's transferable in a multi-layered environment, where the owners, operators, maintainers all have a mechanism to follow through a same pattern of performance that can be same language and same performance metrics can be applied across the board. And that's a key focus around that. And this product is very much linked to the 7630 project that we completed on corridor infrastructure track classification. It will clearly articulate the performance requirements attached to that product. So it's those of you who have been involved in the track classification work or corridor infrastructure, the key performance indicators will be another product that will be of huge value when the work is complete. And coming to the final part, we talked a little bit about RISSB's focus on implementation and adoption. And just want to sort of highlight some of the areas that we are exploring and we will be delivering in the next 3 to 6 months, and you will see that happen. The first one is really around rapid and targeted product reviews. Many of you have participated in RISSB development groups. You would know that we often review products after 5 to 7 years. And when we pick up those products, because so much time has lapsed, we tend to open it up and go, okay, how many things do we need to change? And it's a bit of a comprehensive review that we go through. And we do that comprehensive review over once the document has gone up to 5 or 7 years. What we are looking at now moving forward is to respond to industry needs much more quickly and rapidly. So the rapid reviews are really very targeted changes as a result of an incident or as a result of an incident investigation recommendation. And what that means is the rapid reviews can be quickly done, very, very targeted areas of work, and look at that and update that. What that means is standards and codes and guidelines will be updated much more frequently through targeted reviews rather than waiting for extended period of time. And in those rapid targeted reviews, if a document is well, working really well, and there are no huge changes required. And then we want to also provide that feedback to industry to say, we have looked at this review, the standing committees have looked at this document, the industry members have looked at this document. We are comfortable that this is in the right level. We don't need any changes, and therefore we want to be able to, re-endorse that and reissue that to provide that assurance to industry that this standard, yes, it was done 3 to 5 years ago, but we reckon it's still relevant, and therefore, so that mechanism helps the industry to be constantly be aware, and when they pick up the latest one with an endorsement to say, where the standard is at. A targeted review allows us to kind of do targeted changes, incremental changes over time, and we can do it at shorter time frames as well. And so that's really the idea behind it, always focusing on implementation and adoption. You don't want to wait for massive amount of changes for 5 to 7 years. You want to be able to make incremental changes. So that's really one of those activities that we are doing, the focus from implementation and adoption for industry. We also want to be able to provide additional tools when we release a product. One of the areas that we are looking at for industry adoption is to issue a FAQ highlighting the key elements of the product, changes to the products if it's a review, so that when an industry picks up the product, they can clearly go and say, well, this is a new product. Well, it's a standard, updated standard, but there's a material that's attached to, available for industry that they can look at and go and say, well, these are the key areas of changes. And so, if you're looking at from a risk point of view, organizations can quickly look at those key changes. And if it's relevant, they can action that. If it's not relevant, they can move on and wait for it. So that information will start to provide for every product that is delivered, and that will be, and any additional FAQ as well. If you think that there are related products, if you think there are, additional information that will be of benefit to industry, we will start to add those information into those FAQs that will be available against the product. The other part that we want to start to do that as well is to provide industry. Often when standards are updated, you kind of go new standard, what has changed, and in each organization to go through and do this piece of work to understand what has changed and how to adopt into industry. What we want to do is provide some recommendation. If it's a safety critical element, we want to be able to clearly say to industry, there are some safety critical elements that has been updated in the standard that the industry should consider as a priority, and we want to be able to provide that. If it's not safety critical, then we want to be able to say, well, there are some changes, but those changes can be incorporated into the safety management system through their own review cycles, whichever it may be. Every organization has got a document control procedure that articulates how frequently a management system document needs to be updated. And we may advise to go and say, well, we don't think there are any huge safety critical elements in there, but it can be adopted through your normal cycle of reviews that you undertake. And then some products may be, efficiency or productivity related, and that may be something that be highlighting to go and say, well, there's a productivity element attached to it, or a harmonization element attached to it, and there may not be a time frame required. But we want to provide some level of recommendation to industry based on the content change or the content made available, and provide that clarity. And finally, we're also looking at providing some training material and webinars where relevant. Some products I think are huge impact to industry, and I think it'll be valuable. People have requested us to provide a bit more discussion, provide a webinar to discuss, and so we may be looking at certain products that have come out to even provide a webinar so that people could just get together and discuss that product and get a bit more information. And those webinars will be recorded and made available, and whenever someone looks at the product, we'll be able to go and look at the webinar as well associated with the product, and therefore there'll be additional training information available. So that's a little bit about our focus from implementation and adoption. Over to you, Chris. And that's
good stuff. Thank you very much, Sudha. So I'm just sort of looking through. We've got a few questions, so I might throw them to you. The first one is, has there been a development group signed to the medical standards role risk assessments, and do we have a delivery target in mind for this work?
Okay, so there is a group of people working with NTC. RISSB is part of that conversation. There are some AHP professionals who are involved in that, and the product is called Examples Risk Assessment. So they are not perfect risk assessment. They are just example risk assessment work that has been done. And my understanding is that we are working with NTC, and NTC will be, every time there's a release comes out, they will engage with the industry and provide that for comments and do the engagement piece. We are just facilitating the writing of the activity regards to medical standards. So that's the kind of work that we will do.
Excellent. Thanks, mate. Another question here is the code of practice for transportation of dangerous goods. Are we going to be looking at cylinders and containers related to these systems that utilise hydrogen or ammonia as a material? Are we looking into that side of things?
Look, I don't know the details around on the top of my head about transporting dangerous goods. What I could say is this. We do have a DG code that has been developed by National Transport Commission, and that's focusing, that articulates a wide variety of detail with regards to dangerous goods. The product here is more about rail transportation and the risks associated with the rail transportation and handover. And therefore, it's an operational document on how to handle that. What are the systems that the railway needs to have with regards to transportation of dangerous goods and information associated with it. So that will be the focus of the code of practice for transportation of dangerous goods. It's very targeted towards railway operations and the transition and the information that people need to have and the responsibilities for railway with regards to that. So it's not, so that's the focus around that. So with regards to design related conversations of containers and stuff like that, I'm not at this particular point aware that that will be handled in that. I think that may still remain with the code, NTC code, as far as the detailed design related actions are around. Now, again, please, that's my information at this particular point in time, but that's the focus of the product. So hopefully that helps you to understand the question that I'm asking you.
Thank you very much, mate. And if people are chasing more information about the development groups or would like to be involved in a development group, how do they go about that?
Look, I think that's a good question, Chris. With this product, with regards to code of practice of transportation dangerous goods, the standards development manager is Ian Hodges. Look, reach out, drop an email to us on the info, and we'll link you up with Ian to provide you much more detail on exactly how it's happening, and if you'd like to have further information with regards to that product as well. So I think that's probably the best way to do it, rather than me trying to answer those questions. So well done, Chris. Thanks for asking the clarification.
Not a problem. And of course, if people are interested in any of the products that we've got or spoken about today, info@risb.com.au is the email address to use. And we will pass on that information to the relevant standards development manager, who will get back to you. If there's anything else, if there's no other questions, I think we're pretty much done here. So look, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I really do appreciate it. If afterwards you do have some thoughts or some questions that you didn't think of at the time, as I mentioned, get in touch with us at info@risb.com.au, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have, and on not only this presentation, but anything coming up. So thank you, Sudha, for your time. Wonderful to have you along. Great to have you a part of the conversation. And I hope you all have a great day, and we will speak to you all again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.